Good evening, everyone. Welcome to East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting of Tuesday, the 3rd of August 2021. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting to enhance the accessibility of its meetings to the broader East Gippsland community. These recordings are also archived and available for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate times during the meeting, any members of the gallery who are addressing the council will have their image, comments or submissions recorded. No other person has the right to record council meetings unless approval has been granted by the chair. The Victorian Government has amended the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures and Other Acts Amendment Act 2020 that enables council meetings to be conducted by electronic means, video conferencing, until the 26th of April 2021. The Minister for Local Government reissued the Ministerial Good Practice Guideline for virtual meetings on the 20th of October 2020, outlining the provisions relating to the Local Government Act 2020, allow councillors to attend council meetings electronically, and the requirement where council meetings are open to the public will be satisfied where the meeting is live streamed. The amendments do not preclude councillors from attending a meeting in person in the council chambers. Members of the public are invited to view the council meeting live streamed by following the link on council's website or Facebook page. East Gippsland Shire Council acknowledges the Gunai-Kurnai, Monero and the Bidwell people as the traditional custodians of the land that encompasses East Gippsland Shire. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders past and present. A member's attendance can only be recorded as present where the member can confirm that they meet all three of the following. They can hear proceedings, they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members, and they can be heard to speak. Councillors must confirm all of the above conditions to be noted as present for the meeting. And we do have Councillor Buckley with us attending virtually this evening, so I'm just going to confirm with Councillor Buckley that she can hear, see and be heard by us, and to note assurance from Councillor Buckley that the location that she is participating from is secure to ensure deliberations are confidential. Councillor Buckley, can you see and hear us?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
And can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, I can, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. So we have no apologies this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. That's correct. However, I would like to just acknowledge that the CEO, Anthony Basford, is currently on leave.
Thank you. And thank you for stepping in his place, Mr McConnell. Declaration of conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any declarations, please? I see none. Thank you. Item 1.4 on the agenda is for confirmation of the minutes. So this is for the minutes of the council meeting held on the Tuesday the 13th of July. Councillors, do I have a motion that those minutes be accepted, please? Councillor Stowe, you'd like to move the motion. Councillor Greason, seconding the motion. Is the motion opposed? No? All those in favour? Thank you, the motion is carried. The next meeting of this council will be on Tuesday the 24th of August to be held in the Corporate Centre at 273 Main Street, Bensdale, commencing at 6 p.m. Item 1.6, do we have any requests for leave of absence, Mr Acting CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. There are none.
Thank you. Item 1.7 is for open forum, so for petitions, questions of council and public submissions. Do we have any items, please?
Thank you, Mayor. No, there are no items this evening.
Very good. Thank you. Item 2 on our agenda is for a notice of motion, and we do have a notice of motion this evening. Councillor Buckley, you would like to propose a notice of motion. Would you like to state that motion, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. That the Council writes to the Victorian Auditor-General in support of the letter of the 7th of July 2021 from Councillor Karen Stevens, President of the Timber Towns Victoria, seeking a performance audit into the 2019 Andrews Labor Government announcement to phase out the native timber forest industry in Victorian public forests by 2030.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor White, thank you. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Victorian State Government has provided no information or logical rationale for the decision made in 2019 to phase out the native timber harvesting in Victoria. This decision impacts the forest industry, the people employed in the industry, their families and communities, and all the industries that support the timber industry locally and across the state and country. The timber industry is embedded in the communities of East Gippsland Shire, and this decision has implications for the whole Shire. Timber Towns Victoria, in supporting the timber industry and communities that support the industry, is seeking to better understand the impacts of 2019 decision by the Victorian State Government. It is proposed that as a timber industry Shire that will be greatly impacted by the closure of the timber industry by 2030, that the East Gippsland Shire Council supports the request from the Timber Towns Victoria President by writing to the Auditor-General. At the last council meeting, it was resolved to seek a better understanding of the forestry industry in forest management across the Shire. In addition, Council resolved on the 12th of November 2019 in response to the Victorian Government announcement to close the timber industry by 2030 the following: that the Victorian Government reconsider its decision to cease logging by 2030, that the Victorian Government works with local government, the community and the timber industry to support and enhance a sustainable native timber industry. So this request from Timber Towns Victoria is consistent with the efforts of Council to understand the impacts on the timber industry and more broadly the East Gippsland Shire. Victoria's forest and wood products manufacturing industry is a vital and dynamic part of local economies in regional Victoria. It's Australia's largest, and employs thousands of Victorians across the state. The Victorian economy benefited more than $7 billion by contributions from the timber industry in the last financial year that provides around 21,000 jobs in Victoria, mainly in rural and regional areas. Victorian communities such as Orbost are being negatively impacted due to the lack of timber supply. The flow-on effect is significant. Lack of supply translates to idle mills and job losses. Communities are struggling from the Gippsland fires, COVID-19, and without government intervention to address these issues, greater hardship will be felt. It is not clear why government is phasing out the native timber industry. We've not seen any economic or environmental data to support this. Most people are unaware that 94% of native forests in Victoria are unavailable or unsuitable for harvesting. This means that the native timber industry can only harvest 4 out of every 10,000 native trees. Our native timber industry is regulated and it's sustainable. We cannot say the same of our overseas timber markets. It's worth considering where timber will be sourced to feed our ever-hungry construction and furniture manufacturing industries if the native timber industry shuts down. In closing, it's estimated that it would result in approximately 1,110 job losses, 527 direct, as well as additional 315 from supply chain impacts and 268 from consumption impacts. This, Madam Mayor, this motion is about jobs. It's about East Gippsland jobs. It's about our economy. So I urge all councillors to consider voting for this motion to ensure that we get the answers that we deserve from the state government that we have not received as to why they are going to close down this most important industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor White, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you for the opportunity. Just to add to Councillor Buckley's comments that as well as the job losses, there are going to be significant losses to actual businesses, and I can't see that there will be enough support to make them sustainable in the future. In other words, there will be businesses that just go broke as a result of this. It's a dreadful situation for those people, because even now there is no true roadmap as to who and when these businesses will be shut down, and I think it's this lack of certainty. And as Councillor Buckley said, the industry, if managed very well, and it has been, is sustainable, and we would like to support that the native forest harvesting does continue into the future, because as I say, it has been proven to be sustainable, and it's a very, very small portion of our native environment. So I just will support Councillor Buckley's motion.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Buckley, I would just like to ask a question of clarification, please. I wondered whether you were able to obtain any further information about what a performance audit is or what it entails, please.
Certainly, Madam Mayor. A performance audit is an independent assessment of an entity's operations to determine if specific programs or functions are working as intended to achieve stated goals. Performance audits are typically associated with government agencies at all levels, as most government bodies receive federal funding.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? Councillor Stowe, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'd like to support the motion also. I think it's been well summed up by the mover and the seconder, and I won't repeat what they had to say, but we're representing the people of East Gippsland, and I think the vast majority of our electorate, our ratepayers, do support the timber industry, and I in turn support it as well. So anything we can do to help the industry, I'm happy to do.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Does anyone else? Councillor Reeves, thank you.
Sorry, Mayor. I'm going to vote against this, mainly because I don't understand what a performance audit into the decision means. So I'd need more information about that. I do support the timber industry. I want a thriving, sustainable timber industry, but I'm not sure that this notice of motion actually does that.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? Councillor Crook, thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I find this a little bit hard. I agree that it's always good to have information to base decisions on, and I think it's a real shame that the state government hasn't been forthcoming with spelling out the reasons why they've taken this decision. And I'll say too, it's not actually a decision I agree with, but in part it's a decision that I understand, because the industry as it stands isn't sustainable. It's a sad fact that the way we manage forests now is very, very different from how we used to manage forests, and we really aren't taking the duty of care that we need to. You talk to foresters of old and they're appalled at how forests get managed these days. So I'm happy to support getting more information from the state government about the basis of their decision, but I'd also like to see the continuation of a truly sustainable native forest industry. So I'm a little bit conflicted on this one. I agree with Councillor Reeve as well, that it's really I find it very unclear what we're actually asking here, an audit into a decision. If the decision is to close the industry, is an audit of that decision not asking how effective it is at closing the industry? I'm a bit confused by this. I'd happily hear some more information if anybody's got anything to contribute. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason, please.
Thank you. Mayor. I'm not going to oppose this motion because I will always support requests for more information, that objective information that will assist in decision making, particularly in such important issues such as this around the timber industry. But I do just want to make a comment that in fact there are many evaluations and assessments and audits that have been conducted since 2015 that give a great deal of information and to some extent might explain the state government's decision. I don't, and so I hope that this request doesn't mean going over old ground. It will in fact generate some new and useful information. I think I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Does anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion? If not, I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 3 on our agenda is for deferred business, but I believe we have no deferred business this evening.
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 4 is for councillor and delegate reports. Councillors, we might go around the other way and start with you, Councillor Crook, this evening.
Sure, thanks, Madam Mayor. Obviously, the last couple of weeks has been a fairly dynamic situation with lockdowns and many events, of course, being cancelled. I did have the fortune, however, to attend the Economic Development Australia Forum on Festivals and Events. It was a seminar held online, and it really highlighted for me just what a significant contribution these events make to our local, regional and national economies. But as you would imagine, with lockdowns, COVID and all the rest of it, events are down 90% in 2020 from even 2019. And the flow-on effects, as I'm sure I don't need to explain to anybody of this, are very, very much significant. Events can't get insurance, and in many cases the venues can't open and they can't proceed. There's also a lot of other unforeseen circumstances that stand in the way of events going ahead. A lack of security guards due to issues related to visa and border restrictions. But I will say the industry is certainly looking forward and saying that there's no point bouncing back and that they need to bounce forward. They're asking specifically of councils such as ours that in place of certainty that they need, and we need flexibility and adaptability, and they need information in real time and guidance on health and safety plans. They need an appreciation of the unique operating environment that we all now find ourselves in. And they need to improve visitor experience by enhancing visitor safety. I'll leave that one there. For those who don't know, it's currently National Homelessness Week. What is that, I hear you ask? Well, in Australia, there are over 116,000 people experiencing homelessness on any given night. And Homelessness Week really aims to raise awareness of this and the impact of homelessness on Australia via national and local community events, including providing information on the importance of housing as a solution and educating communities on how we can all make a difference. Only 6% of people who are homeless actually sleep on the streets. I was surprised to hear that. When I think of homeless people, I think of people sleeping on the streets. But in fact, homelessness extends much more broadly than that to people who you don't necessarily see because they're either couch surfing, staying with friends, or their housing is very insecure and temporary. Australia has the third least affordable housing market in the world. 1 in 3 of our houses are investment properties. 2 out of 5 people in Australia that are homeless are under the age of 25. This is a crisis that is nationwide, but it's also one that exists right here in this town, in Bairnsdale, and in various other towns right across our region. In fact, I don't think there's a single town that doesn't experience it in some way shape or form. And I would like to see us do something about that, and it pleases me that as a councillor group, we have in fact all agreed to try and tackle this problem together. I attended the Youth Homelessness Forum this week too as a part of Homelessness Week, which was a great networking event. And we've arranged for next week a specialised presentation on homelessness. And I really look forward to working on this important issue with councillors in our quest to see everybody in East Gippsland and around Australia to have a place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Van Diekel.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. That's a perfect introduction into my update. Unfortunately, everything that I had planned was cancelled except for this one event. So I had the privilege of co-facilitating and attending the Youth Accommodation Forum, which was delivered by the Gippsland Homeless Network Coordinator, Chris McNamara. And she approached me to co-facilitate, I guess, wearing multiple hats and also acknowledging that I've done a lot of work in the youth accommodation space in the past. And the aim of the forum was to address the issue of youth homelessness in East Gippsland and the lack of services around that. And also a bit of a call to action to create a working group to advocate for a youth foyer. So at the moment, the only crisis accommodation that we have in East Gippsland is Nungara Youth Refuge. And I'd love to be corrected if I'm wrong, if there is other services around, but a youth refuge is generally a 6-week stay, and beyond that they get moved out. And at the moment there is no housing beyond that 6-week stay. So they basically just fall into where they were before they went into the youth refuge. It's obviously, during the forum, Councillor Crook messaged me and said there's only 3 houses under the price of $250 in East Gippsland, in Bairnsdale at the moment. And generally, with the demand on housing at the moment, that's not going to go towards a young person who has just come out of youth refuge. So there's really nowhere for them to go. So the forum aimed at creating a working group to advocate for a youth foyer, which is different, which hopefully can be achieved through the big housing build. But a youth foyer is generally a 2-year stay or up to 2 years. So obviously if the young people deem themselves ready to move on earlier, that's okay. And the conditions of being there is they need to be engaged in training, education or employment. So seeing that in East Gippsland I think is very vital, but also acknowledging that that's not enough. It's a really great start, and I can't wait to keep working with my fellow councillors to advocate for that and working with the community, but also acknowledging, and I had someone email me afterwards and said it's really great that you're doing that for young people, but don't forget that youth homelessness extends beyond just the bracket of young people, which obviously we don't ever forget that. And I think I just want to touch on the points what Tom was just saying, that youth homelessness and homelessness in general is actually really prevalent here. And unfortunately, it's not like Melbourne. You don't see it on the streets. You don't see them in front of a shop begging for money. There's people sleeping in their cars. You know, I used to be when I was part of the Bark, I would see someone waiting when it opened so they could have a shower. Like it's not just in front of our eyes. I know people who have slept in their cars, stayed at friends' houses, a different one every week. So it's more than the eye can see. And unfortunately, with the housing crisis at the moment, it's just impacting a lot of people across the board. And the last thing I want to mention with just homelessness or the housing crisis is that I'd encourage everybody to check out a new Facebook page called East Gippsland Housing Crisis. It's an open page and a private one, so there's 2 different pages. And I just encourage people to have a look at that because it shares the real lived experiences of people in the region with this issue. And I think, you know, they're obviously advocating and they're being really active in that space. And I think it's good to just do a bit of a shout out so then we can create some more traction on that page and keep advocating. It's my update.
Thank you, Councillor Van Diekel. Councillor Allen, please.
Thanks, Mayor Mendy. I'd like to acknowledge the award that Lakes Entrance received in the Top Tourist Towns Awards, which fortunately was held on the Wednesday before this current lockdown started in Bendigo, and Lakes Entrance come second behind Ballarat and in front of Bendigo, which was a huge effort. So I'd like to acknowledge everyone that was involved in that, and what a great award for the top tourist destination in our Shire to achieve that. And one of the reasons I think that was achieved, that award, is because of the streetscape improvements that have been happening in Lakes over the last couple of years. And the feedback I get from that is overwhelmingly positive. People feel that it lifts the whole town, and that improvement in facilities in the town got off to a start on another big project for Lakes in the last couple of weeks, which was the Bullock Island Bridge, which is the duplication or the reconstruction of that is well into swing. So that's really great to see. And I noticed this morning when I was driving in that the traffic island in front of number one, the Esplanade, has had a fair bit of the concrete removed, and they were planting plants in there today to improve the streetscape in that area, which is really great to see. And I, along with Tom and I think Mendy and Jane at least, attended the Youth Homelessness Forum the other day, and I found it an exceptional event, and I just want to congratulate Kirsten on the great job she did facilitating it. I think she's did a great job doing it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Allen. Councillor White, please.
Thank you. As everyone else has said, because of COVID, we really haven't had a lot to do, so I've not got any events to report on, but it has not slowed down the phone calls, the text messages or the emails, so we're still being we're still been working. But just one little bit of information, not about our own Shire, but it's just been announced that one of our neighbouring shires, who has been in administration for some time, will be actually holding their council elections this October, which is South Gippsland. So all the best to them. I'm sure they'll be looking forward to getting back to normality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Greason, please.
Thank you. I had nothing to do either in terms of attending events like the Twin Rivers brim fishing event, which I was really looking forward to, and other things. But the Youth Accommodation Forum was excellent, and I think Kirsten summed it up very well, and Tom, with his bit of background on homelessness, was excellent, and Kirsten did a great job chairing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Stowe, please.
Well, I've had quite a busy 3 weeks, contrary to you guys, but I'm not going to bore you with all of the mundane stuff I've been to, but the Gippsland Agricultural Group, a number of us councillors attended their facility out on the Ben Warden Road, and this is a very impressive facility they've got out there. They're a self-help group. It's led by Trevor Caiterness, who's got quite a large land holding out there with a lot of other willing volunteers and a couple of part-time employees. They're doing things like improving grass soil production. They're sharing information, and all for the betterment of farms and production in East Gippsland. They hold an annual conference, and that conference is attended by 200 people statewide. I find the whole setup out there fantastic. I think they're doing a great job, and I wish them well.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Reeves, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Councillors, there's only one item that I'd just like to draw your attention to, and that was the East Gippsland Local Road Safety Advisory Committee that met Monday a week ago, and Councillor Van Diggle was there too. Look, it's a really interesting and important small group that brings together Regional Roads Victoria, VicPol, council officers, community groups, and we've had a very successful Road Safety Advisory Committee for the last 6 or 7 years, and have done some great work, especially all the upgrades around Twin Rivers, the traffic islands, the speed control, Johnsonville, those intersections, that was a result of that collaboration from that advisory committee. So we're really excited to get ramped up again and look at the next round of grants from Regional Roads Victoria to take us through in the next couple of years and get activated again.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Buckley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Rural Victoria had our monthly meeting, and we were discussing, just to follow on, or the segue in from Tom and Kirsten's good work in regards to housing and the problems that we face in rural areas. There was some funding received at $3.3 million from the Victorian Government Regional Jobs and Infrastructure Fund to promote stronger rural councils. It's an initiative, and the project is tasked with being able to undertake research about livability, population attraction and retention of workforce, and also residential and rental accommodation, which, and this is translating into labour shortages and potential new residents to rural communities and members of the workforce who choose to take up employment or relocation opportunities into this area. So the scope of the project is looking at the nature of the housing market in rural Victoria, including the examination of difficulties experienced and deficiencies of the private rental market and buying and selling markets in rural Victoria, the impact of COVID emergency on the rural Victorian housing market, the state of the private housing stock available for buyers and renters across rural Victoria, and current housing pressures on local communities and future decisions by government that might lead to increased homelessness. And there's also planning and regulatory issues that we're looking at, and external factors impacting rural housing and development. So it's really good to know that we've got a very active magnifying glass over these issues, and that we will continue to advocate for rural councils and lobby state government to be able to assist us here in East Gippsland to find solutions and support for this, what is a very crucial part of being able to have a successful economy for our region. And that's all, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. A number of the community events, obviously, that I was due to go to were cancelled too, sadly for those community members, and particularly Council was going to be in Malakuta and at Genoa for our meeting today up at the Genoa Hall, so we're very sad not to be there, but we are happy to report that we'll be trying to reschedule that visit at a later time in the year. I'd just like to highlight perhaps 3 events that I've participated in since our last meeting. On the 16th of July, we had our regular One Gippsland meeting, which was moved to an online meeting. The agendas and minutes for these One Gippsland meetings are available in the councillor portal if councillors would like to look at them. But just as a quick overview, we had working group reports, reports from the Latrobe Valley Association and their work around smart specialisation. That presentation of 20 slides has been made available to councillors as well, and it's really highly recommended. It highlights the ongoing and development of LVA's work in transition around 4 sectors of energy, tourism, food and fibre, and health and wellbeing. And the work is aligned with the Gippsland Regional Plan. The data that they presented during that presentation shows great results achieved by LVA in the Latrobe Valley, and they also presented an excellent case study around the Radial Timber Renewable Energy Park in Yarram. And if you haven't heard of wood vinegar, I suggest you go and have a look at that presentation because it's really interesting stuff they're looking at. I think what the presentation gave me was an assurance in LVA's capacity in this area of transition. There is a briefing to Council to be organised in the future, and of course that work is relevant to an item on our agenda later this evening. We also had a report from Fed Uni showing their very active work in the education space, and TAFE Gippsland. The proposal for the next meeting of One Gippsland will be in Melbourne to do some advocating for Gippsland. On the 21st of July, I attended an online nature-based tourism event, and I think there were a couple of other councillors on the line as well. Great to hear that East Gippsland is working towards certification as an eco-destination. Very exciting work. Again, we're going to be having a presentation to this council in the near future, I hope, about that, so we'll hear more about it. But really interesting to hear some case studies of businesses in East Gippsland and beyond who are making regeneration sort of part of the tourism experience. So the idea is that people come and visit, but they come and abide by, I suppose, or are interested in the values of that business, which might include tourism with a nature focus or contributing back to the environment that they're part of. Very exciting work. Finally, on the 15th of July, there was another online event which is run by the VLGA, and this is a series of monthly online events, and I've shared this link with councillors because I think you might all find these topics quite interesting. This particular one on the 15th of July was about international perspectives on child-friendly communities, and it was particularly focused around the experience of children with regards to the COVID lockdowns. So this event occurred as Victoria began its 5th lockdown, and I think it was really important to hear the perspectives, impacts and rights of children, including from Leanna Buchanan, who's the Commissioner for Children and Young People in Victoria, about how lockdowns can have cumulative effects on children and increase suffering when they don't have power or ability to input. So I think the message is that it's important to prioritise children and encourage them to have fun. So that's my report. We will now move on to item number 5 on our agenda for officer reports, and 5.1, assets and environment. 5.1.1 is for mains gas small tariff tender and contract, and we have the General Manager of Assets and Environment, Ms Weigel, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. The report before you this evening is the outcome of a collaborative procurement process. It's been coordinated by the Municipal Association of Victoria to supply main gas to a number of councils for a 3-year period. Council has a number of small facilities that use gas, and this report would apply to 4 of these facilities. I think the report demonstrates that collaborative engagement has a range of benefits, including allowing us to procure using economies of scale, which are estimated to generate savings of approximately 28% across the participating councils. The report for you councillors also has 2 confidential attachments, including the full recommendation for your consideration. Also present this evening, we have Angus Howlett, who is the Acting Manager of Sustainability and Waste Minimisation, who can answer any technical questions. The report is therefore presented for your consideration, and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Weigel. Councillors, are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Crook.
Thanks for that. This is about the provision of gas to a number of our facilities. I note that gas is inherently unsustainable as a fossil fuel, and I know that we're going to great lengths to try and replace the use of gas through renewable energy. I think that I'm not quite sure on the actual figures, but I wonder if you could tell us what we're doing to try and replace and offset this gas use into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Wondering whether that's one for you, Ms Weigel?
Certainly, I'll have a first go at it, and I'm sure Mr Howlett can add anything that I may miss out on. So the council is very aware that yes, gas is not an energy of the future. Has issues around sustainability. So therefore, as we have been part of a group procurement, not dissimilar to this one, but to procure green energy, sustainable energy for all of our sites. So we have elected to procure 100% of our power generated energy through sustainable means. So we're part of, I think it's the largest energy procurement, sustainable energy procurement by a group of councils anywhere in Australia, and perhaps even more globally than that. So we're certainly looking at how we procure energy in a sustainable way. And we're also looking at these sites in particular. One of them is the Bairnsdale Aquatic Recreation Centre, which we've recently installed a significant solar power source on that building. We've also got solar also on the Paynesville Service Centre, which is another one of these facilities that we're considering, and the Bairnsdale Library. So certainly we're working towards minimising our use of gas at sites, but there are still some things like the Beaufort Memorial Gardens, which have gas lighting, that we're still investigating better ways to provide that same ambience and the same lighting. Mr. Howlett, I'm not sure if you wanted to add to that.
Thanks, Fiona, and thank you, Councillor Crook. The phase out of gas is also a key point of the draft environmental sustainability strategy discussion paper, which I believe Council has had a look at a couple of months ago. And an example of a project more recently was that gas has been phased out at the Lakes Entrance Aquatic Centre and replaced with heat pumps to heat the pools there. So the Environmental Sustainability Business Unit certainly is working hard to reduce gas usage around council where they can.
Thank you, Mr. Howlett. Councillors, are there any further questions? If not, there is a recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Allen, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Allen, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Mendy. I think this presents an opportunity to make some savings, and I think that it's a good thing.
Thank you. Councillor Reeves, please.
Thanks, Mayor and councillors. Look, this is a great use of our membership of MAV and this collaborative approach, this collective buying capacity. The good thing about this is it is a 3-year contract, and we've got 3 years, I think, 3 years and then 3 years and 3 years to look at those alternative ways, especially those big energy consumers like Bairnsdale Aquatic and Rec Centre, really chomps on the gas to keep that water hot. So, you know, we really encourage officers and councils of the future to look at those alternatives, and I hope that we can actually look at those alternatives, heat pumps, geothermal, whatever it takes in the future, so we don't have to buy gas in the future. It's just getting more and more expensive. The report shows us that gas has almost doubled in price per terajoule over the last couple of years, and that'll only continue. So it's not sustainable for the community, not sustainable for the environment, but this is a good way forward at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Is the motion opposed? Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. And there's the motion. That's right. A little bit quick. Okay, thank you. Item 5.2 on our agenda for bushfire recovery. 5.2.1 is Agriculture Sector Advisory Committee Charter Changes. And I think we have Ms. Ragoose online to introduce this.
You do. Thank you very much, Mayor. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm having some troubles with the headset this evening.
We can hear you very well.
The report
yeah.
Thank you. The report before Council this evening is really procedural and seeks councillor endorsement for the changes to the Ag Sector Advisory Committee Charter. Specifically, the amendment recommends in this report, or the recommended amendment from this report, is really to increase the overall membership from 15 to 16 members through the addition of one industry membership, taking these from 10 to 11 members. The recommendation is in the report in front of you, and I'm happy to take any questions should councillors have them, but it's fairly straightforward this evening.
Thank you, Ms Raguse. Councillors, are there any questions? Straightforward. No questions, then there is a motion in front of you, councillors. Do I have a motion? Councillor White, thank you. Seconder? Sonia, thank you. Councillor White, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only briefly, thank you, Mayor. It's just this additional member. It's just we were fortunate to in the beginning to get quite a diverse group of people, but across a fair bit of our region. But this was just we'll call it a late entry, which picked up another area that was not covered by any other members, and I appreciate that this member has come forward to be part of the group, because he has a great amount of experience in both forestry and I can't say the word. I'll say beekeeping. It's a bit simpler, but it's a good initiative, because it adds another tranche to the group, and they'll be very valuable to our committee.
Terrific. Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Buckley, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I just think that the charter and the duties of this particular group are so important for the East Gippsland region. They really will be helpful to guide us as a council, and I think that Ian is a wonderful addition to this group, and that I wish him every best success in being able to support the beekeeping industry. I'm a champion of the bees, and I think it's that we've really got to take care of them and of the industry, as well as he will be able to give us some incredibly good insight to the forestry industry and also select falling methods. So I look forward to hearing from the committee in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Is the motion opposed? Does anybody else wish to speak for or against the motion? If not, I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. The next item is also about the Agriculture Sector Advisory Committee, 5.2.2. Ms Raguse, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is simply to present for Council's consideration a recommendation by the current Agricultural Sector Advisory Committee to Council from their recent meeting held on the 17th of June. And while seemingly an operational request, procedurally, the advisory committees are required to bring these to Council for consideration. The recommendation in this instant requests that councillors consider and approve the investigation into how the new Environmental Protection Authority rules on industrial waste might impact the agriculture and other sectors of East Gippsland, and pending the outcomes of this review, take appropriate action to advocate on behalf of the East Gippsland industry in that instance. Further background information has been provided, and you have the recommendation in front of you to consider.
Thank you, Ms Raguse. Are there any questions of Ms Raguse, please, councillors? The line dropped out a little bit then, but I think we got the gist of what was being said. If there are no questions, then there is a recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Councillor Crook. Thank you, Councillor Allen. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Crook?
Sure, thank you. Look, this is important. The Agricultural Subcommittee have clearly identified a need to better understand the new Environmental Protection Authority guidelines. It's actually a new batch of legislation. There's a new act come in, and it has pretty significant implications for the way we manage waste generally. And the agricultural sector, like any industry, also generates waste. One of the biggest opportunities, I guess, here is that in the agricultural setting, there are a myriad of ways that waste can be turned around in a circular economy and used. And part of what the Act, I believe, is trying to achieve here is in fact just that. So I would hope that through this investigation that we will better understand those opportunities and that they will be able to further reinforce the economic viability for agriculture in our region. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Allen, you wish to speak to the motion? No. Is the motion opposed? Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Reeves.
Councillors, I think it's important that we charge our advisory committees with an important role, and we should seek that advice, receive it and act on it. And that's what we're doing here. So I thank that committee for giving us that advice, and yes, we should support and act on their recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? If not, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 5.2.3 on our agenda is Community Transition Local Economic Development Strategies. Ms Raguse again, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. Just by way of introduction, this report outlines a request by the communities of Swifts Creek and Nowa for council to firstly consider being the auspice for the grant application for the Community Transition Fund and to provide the project management to support the delivery of the respective local economic development strategies. The rationale for this is multiple. If I can just take a moment to step you through the reason why this recommendation has come forward. The community representatives have indicated a need for this support due to the fatigue and reduced local capacity, given the compounding impacts of bushfire recovery and COVID-19 to date. The community representatives' preference is for this arrangement for council to be the auspice. However, more work is presently being undertaken at a local level to confirm this more broadly amongst the community stakeholders. This report would authorise council officers to proceed on the basis of this arrangement being confirmed by those local communities. Such an arrangement would enable the project to be better connected into and align with other recovery activity being undertaken in the region, and would allow these communities to more actively engage in the process without the administrative burden associated. The local economic development strategies will be backed by evidence-based analysis and will be critical to unlocking further transition funding to support the establishment of viable new business opportunities identified and endorsed by the community through the process, providing new jobs and local business growth for these townships. This council has an opportunity to ensure our impacted communities are in the best possible position should the state government not change their stance on native timber harvesting. In closing, Mayor, councillors have a recommendation before them to consider this evening, and at this stage I'll just rest to take any questions, should there be any by council.
Thank you, Ms Raguse. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Sharon. You mentioned that this has actually come at the request of the affected communities, being Swifts Creek and Nowa. That's the case?
Yes, that's correct.
So they've actually approached council and asked us to assist them and auspice the funds being made available through the transition package.
Yeah, Councillor Crook, just to clarify, the process so far, and if I give the example of Orbost Chamber of Commerce as an example, the Chamber of Commerce there had the capacity to apply for this funding through the state government and to lead the process of the development of these local action plans or these local economic development plans. In conversations had with key stakeholders in the region, together with the LVA, who are leading the transition work, to explain the opportunity that was presented to be able to make that application and drive the project themselves, and looked to council for alternative options. And one of those, of course, is to be the auspice and the lead in delivering these projects with them.
Ms. Raghu, sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. I wonder if it might be better if you turned your video
off.
Sorry, we
try.
can still hear you quite clearly. Did you understand that,
Yes, no,
Councillor
thank
Crook?
you. That provides
Okay.
the clarity I was after. It's actually an ask from the communities themselves, so I think it's only right that we try and meet that request.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Sharon. My question is, how much will it cost council to undertake this type of procedure to be able to deliver what the state government is offering? That's my first question. And secondly, considering the council has a standing resolution that they do not support the closing of the timber industry, it seems to me a bit of a conflict to be able to then go and auspice the rollout of the closing of that industry when quite clearly it could be done by the state government itself. Is that correct?
To clarify, Councillor Buckley, let me address firstly the question around the financial implications. The intention with this particular grant is to appoint a dedicated project manager to work with the community to develop these plans. The cost of employing that project manager and the ITC support, the laptops and so on, to be able to allow them to function is fully funded through this particular program. So whilst council in this instance, if it was to go down this path, were to appoint that project manager, there would be no net budget implications on council's current budget. It is all covered through the grant. In terms of the council resolution, my understanding is that this council hasn't got a fixed position on the timber transition, and this opportunity to position the community in the best possible position to benefit from the transition funds available certainly does not compromise council's desire to advocate the government for a changed position in terms of that native timber harvesting stance. And a good example of a council that has certainly is playing on both sides, if you like, is Wellington Shire Council, who have done exactly this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, councillors. Is there any further questions? If not, there is a recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion? Councillor Crook, thank you. Councillor Greason, I think. Seconding, thank you. Councillor Crook, you would like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, it seems fairly clear to me that irrespective of our council's commitment to see native forest industry into the future, this is a large investment by the state government in diversifying the economic base of these towns. Orbost has already received substantial funding and doing some great work in this space. Wellington Shire has also received funding, I understand, on behalf of some other townships. I think this is a good move by our council to support the request of the communities to use that money to try and secure employment opportunities for their futures. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, yes. I think, this is a direct request from two communities that wish to receive the funding and support from us. And it's $400,000 over 2 years for economic diversification planning, leading to the creation of new jobs in sustainable industries and resulting in long-term economic and social benefits for each community. I think and as I said before, the Wellington Shire Council's already auspice and lead, project lead for Hayfield and Yarram districts. And I think we are very well placed to provide the support that these two communities want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Is the motion opposed? Does anybody wish to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Reeves, please.
Look, thanks Mayor and councillors. I think this project is really quite exciting, irrespective of the outcome of timber transition, and who knows, maybe there is a change of heart of the government or about the timber industry. This process actually is about developing innovative practices around smart specialisation as a structure that might include or doesn't preclude a timber industry of some sort. So I think this is really exciting for Swifts Creek and for Now. And I think it's great that officers have been out, consulted with the community, recognised that recovery fatigue, and we're able to act on this and auspice this and roll it out and support those communities. We've seen how successful it's been in Orbost, and I'm really excited to see this with these communities as well.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Does anyone else wish to speak, either for or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Buckley's abstained. Oh. Thank you, the motion is carried. Item 5.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, yes, thank you, Ms Riggers. Item 5.3 on our agenda is for business excellence, and 5.3.1 is the draft service review policy, and we have the General Manager of Business Excellence, Mr Cannizzaro, to introduce this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled the Draft Service Review Policy. The purpose of this report is to outline the rationale and the purpose of this draft service review policy provided at attachment 1, and is seeking Council's adoption of the policy. Given the provisions of the Local Government Act 2020, cost shifting by other levels of government, rate capping, increased regulatory requirements, natural emergencies such as bushfire, flood, pandemics, etc., service reviews are becoming increasingly important to assess if we are operating as efficiently as possible and to demonstrate that we are providing value for money for services the community considers important. The draft service review policy also incorporates the service performance principles in accordance with the provisions of section 106 of the Local Government Act 2020. The draft service review policy presented to you today has been converted from an existing management policy, councillors, to form a council policy for formal adoption by council. Also to note is that a service review framework has also been developed that will be an internal guide for council officers on the conduct of service reviews. The report and recommendations are presented to you tonight, councillors, for council consideration. Thank you, Mayor. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr Cannizzaro. Councillors, any questions, please? Yes, Councillor Reeves.
So, Mr Cannizzaro, this is a new policy as a result of the Local Government Act 2020, isn't it? I haven't seen this one before, and that's what I'm seeing in that documentation.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. It certainly supports the Local Government Act, particularly around section 106 and the service performance principles. It's a new policy with respect to council policy, but it was an existing management policy which we converted into a council policy for adoption.
Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, councillors? I see none. There is a recommendation in front of you, an officer's recommendation. Do I have a motion, councillors, please? Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Reeves, you wish to speak to the motion?
It seems very procedural. Let's move on. Thanks, councillors.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Crook?
Well, only to say that it may be procedural, but it's also important to be continually reviewing what you're doing and making sure you're doing the best job you can, and I believe that's what this policy will do.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed? Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? If not, I put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 5.3.2 on the agenda is a contractual matter for the supply of library materials and services. It's actually a contract extension, And we have Ms Brady, I think, on the online to introduce this item.
Mayor, if I may, I'll introduce...
Sorry, Mr Cannizzaro, I'm bypassing.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled The Supply of Library Materials and Services, and it's a contract extension, which is seeking approval to take up the 1-year extension with the possibility of an additional 1-year extension to an existing contract that allows the procurement of resource material for our libraries to the value of $250,000 per annum. The key points for you to consider tonight, Council, is that the existing 3-year contract has been exercised in conjunction with the Municipal Association of Victoria Procurement and allows for 2 additional 1-year extensions. The Municipal Association of Victoria have taken up the option for extension, which allows East Gippsland Shire Council to do likewise. Service provided under the current agreement to date have been satisfactory, just to note that. Also tonight with me is the Manager Customer Experience and Communications, Nola Brady, who is our subject matter expert and is available to respond to questions of any technical nature. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Cannizzaro. Councillors, are there any questions, please? No questions? Straightforward. Then there is a recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion, please? Councillor Stowe, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Van Diegel. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Stowe?
Oh, this is just a straightforward extension. The job's been done properly before, so don't need to speak to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Van Diegel?
I agree with what Trevor said.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed? Does anyone else wish to speak either for or against the motion? Councillor Reeves, thank you.
Councillors, we should be enormously proud of the provision of our library services across a very broad and challenging shire in terms of its spread and depth and breadth. Literate, numerate and socially competent young people across the whole community are something that we should be proud of, and our ability to contribute to that through library services, and so much more than library services. Our libraries are social hubs, they're safe places, they're warm places in winter, they're cool places in summer, and they're full of great staff who are ever helpful, and anybody who can decipher the Dewey system is well and truly worthy of my recommendation. So good on you, and let's support this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Does anyone else wish to speak, either for or against the motion? If not, I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 6 on our agenda is for urgent and other business, and I believe we have none. Thank you. Item 7 is for confidential business. So, councillors, we now have a confidential item to discuss. So, may I ask for a councillor to move that the meeting is closed pursuant of section 66(5) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider confidential information as defined in the section 3(1) of the Act as being information that contains private commercial information which, if released, would unreasonably expose the business, commercial or financial undertaking to disadvantage. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Stowe, moving the motion. Councillor Greason to second. Is the motion opposed? No. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. We'll now move Thank you, everybody. We're just moving back now into our meeting, and Council has been in the closed camera section to consider item 7.1 on our agenda, which is a construction item, CON 2020-1409 World Construction Package 1 variation. Councillors, you have a recommendation in front of you. Do I have a motion? Councillor Reeves? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Allen or Councillor Crook? Councillor Crook, thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion? Yes. Councillor Reeves, thank you.
Councillors, this variation is to upgrade the World Construction Package to include a synthetic hockey pitch. This is an exciting, really exciting addition, and I'm very proud to be on this council, to be making this decision and supporting this initiative now. Now, we are really important leaders in encouraging more people to be more active more often. And hockey is an absolutely amazing and growing sport. Tonight, you should go home and watch Australia, the Kookaburras, defeat Germany at the Olympics. And had we had this synthetic pitch, maybe we would have beaten, the Hockey Roos might have beaten India the other day, and our Olympic hopes might have been different. But no, in all seriousness, this being able to have a synthetic pitch here in East Gippsland will make an enormous difference for all of those hundreds of young players who aspire to be those Olympic champions in future. I remember being one of the few Australian flags waving, watching the Kookaburras beat Malaysia in KL at the Commonwealth Games in 1998. And it gladdens my heart now to think, and that's in hockey, and it gladdens my heart now to think that we're supporting this all those years later. And those young people, those people who I coached all those years ago in Orbost and in Gippsland for Country Week will have access to synthetic. It's just an amazing surface to play on. And councillors, when that is opened, let's get out there, get our sticks down and have a play on that pitch. It'll be amazing.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Crook, would you like to speak to the motion?
Oh, look, thank you, and I can't, it's hard to follow that act. Look, I'll just say this is, the World Sporting Precinct really is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and having a synthetic hockey surface is obviously a really welcome addition that we will use in this region, or the region-wide. It will get used for generations, so I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Crook. Is the motion opposed? Does anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Stowe, please.
I'd just like to ask a question, actually. In East Gippsland, hockey has a low participation, and this is a significant expense to council. I'm wondering if, Tom, you could give us your thoughts on how this might improve the participation rates of hockey in the area.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Through you, Mayor. What we've seen with other similar developments, and I sort of refer directly to developments in our neighbouring council, Wellington, who have recently constructed a synthetic hockey pitch at the Gippsland Regional Sporting Complex. As a result of that, the participation rate increases of upward and exceeding 100% in some instances. So what we're hoping to see is a real boost in the participation rate for hockey in Bairnsdale and East Gippsland generally as a result of this project. Thanks, Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Does anybody else wish to speak either for or against the motion? If not, yes, Councillor Van de Gelder.
I'm just happy to speak for. I think since the beginning of us being councillors, there's been people who've advocated for the synthetic hockey pitch. In terms of Mark's comments, I think also this will provide the opportunity for social connection going into the future. COVID has stopped sport and has stopped any sort of physical activity as a team. And I do think that the synthetic hockey pitch will bring more people to play. It's also, I have friends that play hockey. I don't play hockey. I got hit once in the chin because someone swung it like a, your sport, golf. Yeah, and so I decided to boycott any hockey. But I do think that it will increase. When it's raining a lot in winter, no one can use the hockey fields. So at the moment, I think it means that we can use it year round. It can be enjoyed by many people. And it seems that Nagel and was it Swan Reach are happy to use it as well, was it? So I'm really excited for it. I think that all the advocacy that these groups have done has finally paid off. So I'm really happy to endorse it. And this is going to be a project that's going to be, you know, a great sporting precinct. And I am happy to play a game of hockey as a council group.
Thank you, Councillor Van Tigel. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Greason, please.
I just want to commend the work of the East Gippsland Hockey Association, pulling all the local hockey teams together and seeking funding to support the synthetic surface for their field. So well done. You've got it.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. If there are nobody else to speak, then I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried.
It's an excellent.
And for the benefit of those watching at home, we can see what that resolution is that's just been passed by council. Excellent. That concludes the business of this meeting. So at 7:25, I would like to thank all the councillors, the executive and officers and the